Welcome to another episode of Terror Tarot here on RUE Morgue TV. My name's Laura Hokstad. I'm an intern here at RUE Morgue as well as a tarot card reader. And in this series, we look at the use of tarot cards in horror films. So on today's episode of Terror Tarot, we are going to be looking at Jane Schoenbrun's 2001 coming-of-age horror film, We're All Going to the World's Fair. The film was written and directed by Jane Schoenbrun, who previous to this released a found footage documentary chronicling the lore and mythology around the internet's own boogeyman, Slender Man. And it's very fitting that she started her career with that documentary leading into this film, because We're All Going to the World's Fair is very much about internet lore and creepypastas. If you don't know what that term means, let me explain. Creepypasta is a portmanteau of the word creepy and copy-paste, which is essentially a block of text that is copy and pasted on internet forums, on social media, and also through those chain emails that we used to get where, like, if you didn't send it to 10 people, you'd be cursed for life. So that's kind of the origin of these creepypastas. They're mostly surrounding internet urban legends. So think like a virtual Bloody Mary. And We're All Going to the World's Fair is about just that. The film introduces us to Casey, who is a lonely teenager who spends a lot of her time on the internet. And the film begins when we see her undertake this viral internet challenge called We're All Going to the World's Fair. The way that you start this challenge is you have to say, "We're all going to the World's Fair" 3 times, and then you pick your finger, and then you watch this cursed video, and you close the ritual by touching your screen with your own blood.
I want to go to the World's Fair. I want to go to the World's Fair. I want to go to the World's Fair.
So right away, I was like, this is totally something I could see myself doing as a kid on the internet late at night by myself. I immediately related to Casey in that way. But I actually ended up relating to her even more when I was doing research for this film, because it turns out that the writer, director, editor, Jane Schoenbrun, ended up transitioning during the promotion of this film. This film is very much steeped in a very purposeful queer lens. And I think that it has a lot to say about queer kids who don't have a social network, that they find that online. Outside of Casey, we really don't see any other characters in the film. We hear her dad in one scene, but we never see him. And we also learn that he's a widower. So it's just another way in which we learn that Casey is very isolated.
It's okay.
So after taking the challenge, we see Casey start to look online and see what other players have documented as their symptoms. Because this viral game basically exists through uploaded videos from other players taking the World's Fair challenge and then saying what's happened to them. And some of these videos are weird. We get one video where a guy says that he, since taking the World's Fair challenge, has no feelings of pain and he can't feel cold. And we see another girl who says that she's turning into plastic. So it's very ambiguous in this way. The people that participate in this challenge are creating a world and creating a mythology around it. And when they're in the game, they're very much taking it seriously. We see Casey kind of starting on this path, taking the World's Fair challenge, but then we don't really know as an audience member how much of it she's buying into or how much of it is meant for those videos. It's interesting because she is kind of an unreliable narrator in that way, because what she's putting out there performative for the challenge, or is it some kind of strange form of self-expression, or is it somewhere in between? So when she's scrolling through all of these different World's Fair videos. She comes across one that's kind of actually a very cool body horror moment where one of the players has discovered that they have fair tickets coming out of their arm, and it's this very long, painful scene of somebody just pulling out like carnival tickets, which is just like so gross and weird and great. Eventually, her videos catch the attention of another player online who goes by JLB. And we do see this character in the film. He is an older gentleman who seems to be very knowledgeable in this World's Fair lore. And he begins interacting with Casey with her videos, making videos directed at her. And it is very creepy when you're on the internet, you really don't know who you're talking to. And just seeing that visually, that power dynamic there of this like strange older man communicating with this young teen girl, it just gives you all kinds of creepy, icky vibes. But he does reach out to her and she doesn't like that. So the next scene is her doing a tarot card reading directed at whoever's watching. You know who you are.
Hey guys, Casey here. So I'm going to be doing a tarot card reading for whoever's watching.
The tarot card reading that she does is very interesting, and when I watched it, it really stood out to me. And in researching the film, I learned that Anna Cobb, the actor who plays Casey, is actually a tarot card reader in real life. So when I was watching the film, the way in which she just is very much describing the card and describing this person, I was like, this person knows what they're talking about. So it was very cool to see an actor doing a tarot reading who actually knows about tarot. So the first card that she pulls up is the Nine of Swords. On this card, we see a person sitting up in bed with all of these swords hanging over their head. And this card is very much representative of anxieties, fears, the things that keep us up at night. And Casey also describes this card in that way as saying that the person she's reading for is lonely, anxious, has mental health problems. In that way, the first card right off the bat, we're off to a good start with her tarot reading. The next card that she pulls is the Three of Pentacles. For this card, it has a lot to do with teamwork and communication. In the image, we see an architect working with a stonemason to construct this cathedral. So it is all about that kind of like interconnected communication. However, when Casey pulls this card, she describes this card as someone who is trying to deceive people. And I did do a bunch of research on this card, trying to see if there was maybe a shadow meaning that can kind of reference that, but there wasn't anything that I found. That's not to say that it's not wrong though, because with tarot, there are the written kind of traditional meanings, but then you also have to trust your intuition when you're reading the cards as well. So I think that from Casey's mental and emotional state at that time, when she sees a card that's all about community, teamwork, and working together as somebody who's feeling isolated and challenged and alone, that she sees that kind of idea of community as a group of people trying to deceive her. So I think, again, it's directed at JLB in that he knows all of this stuff about the World's Fair, but she doesn't feel like she's a part of it. The next card that Casey references is the Chariot. And this card is all about willpower, movement forward, kind of charging ahead for your goals. And Casey interprets this card in a similar way in that she says that this card is about somebody who's really pushing forward their agenda. And once again, I think this is about JLB because he has constantly told her that she doesn't know what she's in for, that she's in great danger, and he's almost trying to like tell her how to experience this World's Fair challenge. So she sees him as pushing this narrative and she doesn't feel like she has that control over it. The other card that she pulls out is the Hierophant. She uses this in combination with the Chariot, saying that somebody's pushing forward their agenda and also thinks they're like this big important person. The card itself does show that a little bit. What we see on it is this almost religious figure. It also can be interpreted as a teacher, kind of an older masculine figure that tries to guide people. So her pulling that card is very interesting as well with the dynamic that she has with JLB. And it also added to that creep factor for me because when we think of that dynamic of like that, religious leader or a teacher and student dynamic and how dangerous that can kind of be in these online settings. The last card that she references is the Knight of Pentacles. This card is about somebody who's very methodical and plans things out and is very calculated. She references the person who she's reading when this card comes up as somebody who is slow moving. So I think that kind of ties in, you know, somebody who's methodical is going to be a bit more slow moving in that sense. But again, I see this card as representative of JLB's personality. The scene prior to this, we see a shot of his desktop where he has all of these notes detailing how he's communicated with one user about their experience with the World's Fair and how he's going to communicate with someone else. And he has this huge script about talking about Casey. You get to see this kind of like behind the curtain of what he's doing, how he's weaving these different stories through this World's Fair challenge as a way to communicate with these people online. So it's very methodical and again, very creepy. So overall, I think the use of tarot in this film was done very well. And knowing that Anna Cobb is a tarot card reader in real life and that scene was completely improvised is very interesting because she's not only reading the cards very insightfully, but she's doing it in character. I also noticed that the deck that she uses in the film is the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, which is a very traditional deck. It's honestly the first deck that I got when I was a teenager, so just another way in which that I related to Casey. And I feel like there's something very much tied to tarot card reading and discovering who you are and kind of like becoming that person that you want to be, and that self-growth and self-exploration is all kind of tied in.
Appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you guys another time. Bye.
So those are my thoughts on the film and their use of tarot. I think it's very interesting that it is a film based on internet videos, and then they chose to put a internet video of tarot in the film, and now here we are making an internet video about that film. I just really like that. And that does it for another episode of Tarot here on RUE MORGUE TV. Thank you for tuning in, and please remember to like and subscribe so you can see more of our content. As well as please leave a comment below and let me know what your thoughts were on the cards used in this film, or what you thought about the film itself. Or also if you have any recommendations for other films that we can explore that use tarot. I'm always open to hearing it. I'm your host, Laura Hokstad, and join me next time and we'll see what's in the cards.
Anybody else, when you hear Slenderman, want to call him Slenderman?
Slenderman!
Jimmy Slenderman?
That's his like more distinguished name. Yeah. Like he's going to a ball. He's like, oh, I'm Slenderman.
Oh, Mr. Slenderman.